Okay, recording start.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good people of Los Angeles and those with Angelino, black and gold sympathies the world over in digital rectangles everywhere. I am so happy to be back with you today with the original trio of season pass. We have Josh Gross with us. We've got Ryan Wallerson. You guys know me. I'm Alex Dywer. We are doing this on video for the first time ever in our respective quarantine situations. Ryan's out on the East Coast. Josh and I are here in Los Angeles. We're going to get into what is being dubbed the COVID Cup, the tournament that may or may not happen all the way through. We're going to talk about Carlos Vela. We're going to talk about LAFC. But guys, first of all, how are you doing?
You know, teetering. I think the physical machinations of that answer kind of do a good job of giving the answer. Teetering on sanity and oblivion. I personally am about to dive into the COVID cesspool that is Florida, following LAFC and the Galaxy to cover this tournament from the ground. Enjoying a couple of days of peace here in the relatively quiet Pocono Mountains until then. But, you know, until both teams are eliminated or one of them wins, or the tournament is canned altogether for reasons. I'll be there to experience it all firsthand. But for now, just enjoying a moment of calm before the storm, surely.
Wild, you're going to be there, man. I mean, you got some guts, I think. Are you going to be in the bubble, or like how are you doing it?
No. So they offered us rates when I did my credentialing. They offered us rates within the bubble, but I have so much family and such a network in Orlando that I've opted to stay with younger, often tested friends of mine who asked me to myself get tested in the days before my flight and after. It's a guest house that I'll be staying in, so it's self-sufficient. And yeah, just 2 masks on, which is 2 masks more than most people in Florida seem to want to wear. Oh yeah. So what I do, actually, I have them right here, so I could kind of. I use this mask as the base, and then I either have a second layer cloth mask or the traditional N95s, and I put that on top of it. I'm not playing with this stuff, man. I haven't been to this date, and going into Florida, my practices will only be enhanced because obviously I'm trying to come out as healthy as I'm going in. Knock on wood.
Well, I'm glad to be with you both, and we do have a fourth guest, a special guest. Max Bretos is here. We're going to welcome him into the show. Max, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hello.
That's excellent.
I went for a run and had a shower, and now I have that post-sweat run. So sorry, let me close some of these blinds. So how's that? Yeah,
looking good, Max.
We guys with all this facial hair, we look like the Doobie Brothers, man.
We haven't hit on Mirrored yet. I think we're all feeling shock, quite honestly.
Max, are you making the grand return to your home state? Are you going down to Florida for any of this?
I am not. If my presence was required there, I would go. I mean, obviously, I'm not rushing to get over there, but we're doing stuff studio-wise and not really calling any games, but we're doing some pre and post stuff for the LAFC games. So, yeah, we'll be keeping busy. I've been building a home studio. It's been pretty active, and I think we'll keep it going that way. But Ryan, did I hear you're going?
Yes.
When are you leaving?
So I fly down. I bought a ticket for the 10th because, as you know, LAFC kickoff their tournament begins the 13th, Monday, against Houston. So I bought a ticket for the 10th because I want to just make sure that the ball's kicked.
That's good.
Yeah, with everything going on, it's just if they decide in the last 24 hours or the last 24 minutes that, we actually shouldn't do this, or, it starts and goes a way that they don't like, anything that would cause a stoppage in the first 48 hours, I'd be able to avoid the trip. Otherwise, any other news that comes down, I'll be down there already. But I figured that's I can't hedge the entire bet, but at least playing it as safe as possible.
Yep. I think it's promising signs. We actually had a bad situation with 2 clubs, but I mean, those last clubs arrived. Now we just kind of wait. It's LAFC and the Galaxy and the Rapids. So we'll, I guess, get. I think they've all been tested and it's been okay, but obviously you don't know. But you had two situations, one bad one, and I look at the NWSL as an example, and they had a very similar situation with FC Dallas, the Orlando Pride, and they've been able to get going, and it looks like they'll be able to finish without any entanglements. Granted, Utah's a lot safer than Florida, but I think once that bubble's set, it'll be safe.
Max,
are we live? Is this actually live?
We're not live. We're not streaming.
But
live.
Are we recording?
We're recording.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, good. Let me bring my good stuff then.
Do it. That's why we have.
Don't hold back. This is our debut video version of the Season Pass show. Josh sort of put us onto this StreamYard platform, which has been awesome so far. We got our little name tags here. We got a scroll down at the bottom. We're rocking it, man. But one thing we wanted to all sort of just sit back and reflect on was back in March, day before LAFC was about to play Cruz Azul, coming off this emphatic comeback against Club Leon. Suddenly, this whole tournament, this whole idea of us winning the CONCACAF Champions League, of LAFC, lifting a trophy for the first time for an MLS club, like so many things have changed, and yet not much has changed for LAFC, right? Like it's sort of like the same thing when you listen to what Bob talked about yesterday, right before the team got on the bus and headed to the airport. So, like, what is the feeling at LAFC right now? I haven't been in the mix with the players and stuff the way that Ryan, Josh, and I are usually. Max, what's your sense of like how the general feeling is at the club? Has it changed?
I haven't had any access either, and obviously I would spend 2, if not 3 days a week at the Performance Center. Definitely 2. And I've respectfully, because I know they want as few people there, so there's a requirement where some of the staff or certain people of the media are going to be there, and I didn't want to eat up one of those spots, even though I wish I did probably a little bit. I wish I had a little access to get ready because we're going to be talking about them a fair bit. Been fortunate to do a lot of stuff on Instagram and through Bernard on our YouTube, all the LAFC social media handles. I've probably spoken to every player over the last, at least I'd say about 15 of the players over the last 3 months, all staggered. So they're at different times. I spoke to Pancho Ginella last week, but I spoke to Jordan Harvey 3 months ago. So obviously it's a lot's changed during that path, but I'm very happy I at least been able to carve some of that time out through the club, and we've been able to post some of those things. Speaking with Bob periodically, I sat in with his press conference yesterday, which was very helpful. I heard Josh on there, but he couldn't. He had an old Zoom.
I thought I had like the latest Zoom, and I couldn't get in. I wanted to ask Bob a question. I'm sure he would have hated. I just wanted to know if he designated a new captain for the COVID Cup.
Yeah,
Carlos wouldn't be down there. So,
and I know there was a question about maybe one of the academy kids getting a chance, and maybe that's on the tab. Maybe
it did sound like he might have that happen, right? Like the way he answered that question about the academy.
And Christian Torres is the one who's furthest along of the academy players, and that could be really interesting. That could be not interesting. That'd be a great story to come out of it if Christian Torres or one of those guys takes the spot of Carlos Vela. I think he would have. I don't know if he would have answered it, Josh, but it's a good question. And there's a lot of guys not making the tournament, and that's when you have so many guys who make the tournament, you look at those who don't, and it's a small group, and you want answers. But Carlos is a good one, and A, his wife's pregnant. B, he said it's a complicated pregnancy, so we have to respect and honor that. There are some guys who are stepping out that say they don't want to go away from their family, which I respect. But I think if you're from one of those clubs, maybe find a contingency, because if you're looking at this tournament, all these guys are going there. This is, there's a lot at stake for Major League Soccer in this. If this goes well, it helps with their broadcast partners in a big way. They have a new deal coming up on the horizon. And if it goes poorly, I don't think it's not a make or break thing for MLS, but it's not gonna. You want to get the most out of it based on all the logistics you've had to go through. But just to answer your question, Dweezy, I think to answer it simply, yeah, we don't know a lot, but there's comfort there with LAFC because they go through the system. They have the best coach in the league. They have the biggest staff in the league. They have everything covered where other clubs don't. And maybe that's why a club like maybe Dallas wasn't able to dot the I's and cross the T's. But LAFC has that in place, and they always have. And that's going to separate them regardless of whatever is thrown their way.
Max, what do you make of like just the pure sports competitive aspect of a tournament like this, considering the circumstances? We know LAFC won't have the MVP in Carlos Vela. Other clubs may not have some players that they'd like to have. They may be shorthanded. What's the approach based on the conversations you've had with the players in terms of this moment, this tournament, how unique it is?
I always know with LAFC, and I've spoken with the players. I've spoken with Bob, John, Tom Penn. They if they're in a tournament, they're in it to win. And Bob said that on the press conference. They want to win it. And I think this is a unique, we hope this is the only time this tournament ever takes place. And they would probably take a lot of glee if they were able to say our name is on that trophy and our name is the only one that will be on that trophy. So I think they're going to be ready and rearing to go. I think a lot of MLS clubs, once it gets started, I'm optimistic. I mean, there's going to be some dreck games. There's going to be some rough games. There's going to be these hot this hot Orlando weather that's going to slow things down to a crawl. There's going to be some ugly games. But I think once there will be some good games in the group, and then when I get to the round of 16 in the quarterfinals, I think it's going to be real entertaining competition. It's the only show in town until the NBA rolls around at that hour. It's going to be really good times for the West Coast audience, which I'm excited about. I've been really thrilled with all the European leagues. There's games every day, and because I'm stuck at home and I'm working from home, I watch them. And I'm a smarter soccer fan than I was 3 weeks ago because I'm watching the middle pack games. I think I'm going to do that as well for MLS because we watch LAFC games and who they play. We'll watch the national game, which is 10 teams at tops that they will showcase. Now you get to watch all of them at different times. So if you want to really buckle down and get into MLS, this is a great time to do it.
What do you think about when you talk about, the on-field, the group stage? It's the LAFC, it's the Galaxy, it's Houston, and it's Portland. The way that the tournament works, to get out of group stage, you either win the top two or you're one of the top, top two second-place teams?
Or third-place teams.
Yes, one of the top two third-place teams. I'm sorry. But when you look at Group F, obviously got a lot of attention for having both LA teams in it. Those closer to LAFC's culture know that Portland is also a big draw. What do you think of the group?
It's a great group. I think it's going to be a grind. I think LAFC are well positioned. Houston's a bit of the wild card. The new coach, but a very accomplished coach in Tab Ramos, and I think they're going to be difficult because they have a lot of good quality in attack. And then it's obviously the Galaxy, which comes with so much to it. It doesn't have Vela. It doesn't have Jonathan Dos Santos, which is a bit of a push with regards. Obviously, Carlos Vela is the super talent, but Jonathan Dos Santos is their most important player, you could argue. And then Portland is a team that is well equipped for these kind of tournaments. They want to compare this to a World Cup. In teams that do well in World Cups are those teams that can grind and get 1-0, get a tie here without scoring a lot. That's Portland.
Yeah.
So I think the timing of the games is interesting. I think it's set pretty well for LAFC, but if something slips in the first game, you're in trouble. I think with LAFC, you can't just say they're going to win the tournament. There's too many wild cards involved to say, even though they are the favorites, to say they're going to win it. But you want to get at least 5 games in here. You don't want to go back and watch it, and teams are playing for another 2 weeks, getting valuable games while you're just training. I mean, if you've made that trip to Orlando, you want to make the most of it. It's going to be a long tournament, but I think at the very least you want to get 5 games out of it. And LAFC is going to put, that's going to put a lot of pressure on that group stage, which is a difficult group, more difficult than any other, I think.
Max, I think that, based on synthesizing everything I've read about the tournament, following, obviously like the conversations you and Vince have had since then, shout out to Vince also, just looking at this whole thing in the big picture, getting the most out of it really for American soccer is this thing coming out first, the first thing of American sports, like you said, good TV times, the opportunity to sort of be a trampoline for the league. I think that seems to be the main purpose of doing the tournament in the way that they're doing it, when they're doing it, despite maybe some of the dangers and potential pitfalls. We also know that the USL will be potentially starting up here soon, and Louisville is actually going to be, I believe, the first American sports team to have fans in their stadium. The team Mark Anthony K came from, they're going to have like 50% of their fans in the middle of July to open their new stadium in Louisville. Like, do you believe, as someone who's followed this sport for as long as you have, that this tournament really does have that opportunity to boost the sports standing in the United States, or whether it's something that's, is that like a pie in the sky idea and we're just going to see how it goes? Or kind of how have you read, that side of it, like the motivation to come out and be first and to do it in the way that they're doing it?
Shout out to the state of Kentucky, by the way, for keeping their cases so low where they could do that. I think it was a couple New England states and Kentucky. They're way ahead of the curve, and that can't be an accident. So well done that they are now going to be able to play in front of fans, which has got to be such a cathartic moment, not just for the fans there, but for all Americans to see a game where there's teams, where players there. That's big, and that's something to strive for. So hats off to Louisville City for that. With regards to the tournament, Dweezy, it's gonna provide a glow. I don't think it's going to be that big. I think people will get into certain games. MLS as a TV product is not going to improve by leaps and bounds, maybe a little bit, minute developments along the way. There's been that pushback where, okay, this tournament, once it's getting going, you've got to go all the way through. There's no half measures. And once you've got it built there, and afterwards where you were said, okay, it was said in many of these states and by the governors that you could play without fans. That could have probably started here at July, even though there has been the uptick of cases. But if you looked at it that way, it probably would have had the same kind of push. It would have had the same sort of results. This tournament, I mean, when more I was reading it, I always wanted to see games. But once you heard about what was going on, I was like, I wasn't all in on it. Now that it's here, I'm excited. The biggest fear I had was how are they going to pull it off? And I think MLS, by and large, with a couple big scares along the way, are going to be able to pull that off. It's going to be good. I think we all got to do our part to really push it as well. I mean, MLS has such a tall hill to climb with regards to winning fans because it's viewed as inferior, and you're not going to have your best player there, so that's a bit of a problem. But I think people are dying to see stuff on TV. That's a terrible choice. Or people are really eager to watch things on TV. And I think flicking around, and ESPN is a big partner, that's huge. And I would say finally that a lot of the games are on ESPN, and working at ESPN, that's a big deal. If it's on ESPN2, it gets lost. If it's on ESPN, it gets the promotion, it gets the Sports Center lead in, it gets the Scott Van Pelt treatment afterwards. You can't, if those shows are there, you can't pretend that the game didn't happen. It will get that. I hope they just have people in place to continue the conversation before and after games.
When it comes to LAFC and their prospects specifically, obviously we're talking about whether LAFC's placement in the tournament without their best player, but I know he set the record for individual goals last year, but the team tied the record for collective goals scored. So obviously LAFC know how to score outside of their MVP. Who do you think available to Bob Bradley at the tournament steps up and fills that void? Any combination of players? Obviously, we know Bob likes, and he said it in the presser, he likes his offense to come from multiple sources. In practice, they're trying multiple combinations. I know you haven't been there, but in your discussions with players, just who sounds like they're primed for a big tournament?
I'm excited to see Bradley Wright Phillips and a healthy Dio, but listening to Bob, he said neither was 90 minutes. Maybe they can combine to get good offensive results. You obviously think about, hey, this is the moment for Brian Rodriguez to seize the day. Maybe he does, but I think you got to look at old reliable sources at this point, the old guard with the team, which brings me to Diego Rossi. I think Latif Blessing. These are the guys that, it means a lot. This is their club. This is their main club, and they've been there through this incredible ride for the team. I am optimistic that some of these players, even Andy Nahar, you thought you'd like to see him as a right back, but they're saying pump the brakes a little bit on guys like that. Jose Cifuentes, Pancho Ginella got a look. Bryce Duke got a look. Enough to say that these guys have got they're healthy, that they should be able to contribute. I think the depth is going to be huge. But if there's one name of one guy that I would put our hopes on because of health and everything, it would be Diego Rossi. I don't think that's a surprise either. Obviously, that's just a safe bet, but it's a really good safe bet.
Right. Quietly one of, I think, the fourth most productive striker in MLS during his LAFC tenure.
It makes it so easy. You forget about it, how productive he is, and he works so hard. And this is the kind of tournament that I think the guys who really work at it, and you look at the other leagues for an example of what kind of players have made an emergence, and you see those guys who are just unstoppable, the Energizer Bunnies, and that's Diego Rossi, and he will work until he scores, and I think he'll get a few goals there.
Rossi's always
awesome.
Good. I agree.
Yep. We're all excited to see it. And I do think there's a lot of weapons. Max, you've been so kind with your time, like you always are. I wish the four of us were all standing at the Performance Center talking to the players, joking, laughing in person. I look forward to when we can all do that again. But thanks for hopping on this debut Season Pass COVID Cup special edition. And take care, man.
We're going to keep our eyes peeled. Let's grab our guitars and play a song. Taking it to the street.
Play one, man. We're waiting for you.
We're a band. We do this together. No, but thanks, guys. It's always good. This looks great. I'm looking at this production. And it's you guys. Your opinion really matters with this club. You put your time in, so I always know it's going to be a good conversation. And obviously, this was no different. So anytime.
There we go.
Thank you, Max.
All the
Thanks,
credit
Max.
to Josh. Thank you, Max.
Good man, Josh.
Max Bretos.
Dropping knowledge, making it sound
Yeah,
good.
we're gonna do our best during the tournament, just as we're gonna have dispatches from Ryan, boots on the ground in Florida. We're gonna try to bring on different folks in the LAFC community who want to talk about this one-of-a-kind tournament. Guys, Max had a lot to say, like a true media professional, hitting it from every angle. Let's pick up there on that last conversation, right? We're looking for ways that LAFC can be productive without the most productive season in MLS history there for you in Carlos Vela. Brian Rodriguez was a name that he did not mention, and someone who, while he has not yet scored for the first team in a real game, he scored in preseason. Brian's a player that's continually drawing interest from Europe. He's a player that when you watch him in training, his abilities are pretty evident. He was drawing interest even before he came to LAFC from some of the bigger clubs. And, it goes without saying, he's scored for the Uruguay national team against the United States, among other exploits. So where are we thinking Brian's going to be in this conversation, and having nothing to go off of and none of our training, sort of peering over the fence and watching how guys train? What's your general read on him, and whether or not he can be one of the people that produces for Carlos Vela's absence?
Well, I think that a half each from Bradley Wright Phillips and Diamande in the center, with Diego Rossi and Brian Rodriguez on the wings, sounds as dangerous as any offensive combination that we'll see from another team in MLS. And that's kind of the thing with LAFC. They have amassed, almost hoarded, so many offensive pieces, especially bringing in a Bradley Wright Phillips, author of 108 goals for the New York Red Bulls, and knowing having a known commodity like Diamande, they would have started the season with these guys on the mend, but now they're not 100%. But the fact that they'll be able to contribute what we'll call significant, if not total encompassing minutes at this competition, I think that it gives Bob a really good look in terms of not relying on any one player and being able to maintain that LAFC way of offense coming from all directions. But I mean, we know who Diego Rossi is. When this team needs a goal, he gets them a goal. The supporters sing songs about him for a reason. And it's as you say, Dweez, Brian Rodriguez hasn't scored in the regular season yet, but he lit up. He had a goal scoring streak in the preseason, and he really put his skills on display, albeit not in in-game situations. But it'll be interesting to see how this LAFC attack gets on against some of these defenses that, haven't played a competitive match in 3 months, because one thing you have to give Bob Bradley credit for is that his practices do well to replicate in-game situations. So I'm really excited to see, and I'm pretty confident that LAFC's attack is going to come on, not at 100% by any means, but certainly I think it'll be more than a lot of the defenses that they'll be facing will be able to handle for 90 minutes. So I think that for LAFC to do the best that they can, no one player should catch fire and become that player that defenses are trying to neutralize with double teams. What you want their eyes. You want their eyes to be shifting from player to player, because they don't know where the ball is going to go next. They don't know where the finish is going to come from. And, they have a chance for that. Certainly Brian has a chance to not only open his scoring account with LAFC, but put significant deposits in and kind of make good on the fact that it's taken so long. This could be the stage for him.
I'm with Ryan on all of that. And I had this thought once Carlos came out, he decided, like, I'm not going to go down to Florida. I'm going to be a family man, stay here and be accountable to the people who love me. And that's all that matters. And I don't think you can criticize him for that. My first thought was like, wow, what's the silver lining here? You get to see LAFC without the player that everybody keys on as the key to LAFC, right? So we get to see the system, Bob's system, really come to the forefront. The one thing that I wonder about is that Carlos, you always just have that quality. He's always there in that moment. He's got the quality, he can finish. And then, like, not having that to key on, to rely on for the players, someone's going to have to step up, and more than one, I think, is the key. And they've got enough attacking options. They've got enough ways to put the ball in the net. But when it comes to crunch time, are people fighting for that opportunity? Are they working together as a group trying to engineer these moments? Like, when things really come down to it, does someone take the reins and say, hey, I'm the leader here. This is I'm stepping in now. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how all that transpires for them. I don't think they're having a problem scoring goals. I think this is going to be a high goal scoring tournament. It's MLS. It's like, who can defend, who can really push and make it ugly. And Max brought up a good point about Portland in this group. So they can do it. And we know the legend of the Portland LAFC matches already. I'm curious for the silver lining more than anything, to see this team weave in and out, create opportunities, not have to rely on just the star. And they weren't doing that anyways, but it always felt like that just because Carlos was so transcendent. He was peerless, really. I think LAFC has to take a step back as a favorite. Most people probably would have pegged them as the odds-on favorite. Now you probably can't do that, but I don't know if they still don't deserve to be. I mean, that's the interesting thing with this club.
What Josh just described about the opportunity to see Bob's system is something, I think I completely and totally agree with. I think, like, in the press conference, he even said, someone asked, how much changes with having Carlos Vela not available, and he said nothing changes. So the system stays the same. And yes, they have had games without Carlos, and yes, they have excelled in some of those moments without Carlos. But this will be, a string of games on an entire tournament without him if it does go all the way through. What I find even more true is that this is a chance, maybe I'm too ignorant about American soccer to make such a bold statement, but for the first time, someone can sort of prove that you can inject a club in America with a playing style and an identity that doesn't matter the way you rotate players, that doesn't rely only on one superstar. MLS has always been built on the designated player rule and relying heavily on that expensive talent since that was introduced with the arrival of David Beckham. What this does is it allows you to see, just like a Barcelona plays with their personality, right? Bob talked about personality. He talks about identity. He talks about culture. He talks about a system. He talks about how pieces and players can be interchanged and the system stays the same. He's like, we're playing 4-4. We're playing 4-3-3. We're playing 4-3-3. Someone brought up, he's like, no, in this one game you had, and he's like, no, it wasn't. It was 4-3-3. Like, we have a system. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Everyone knows what they're going to do, and yet the brilliance of it is in the training. It's in the little things. It's in the small movements. It's in the players understanding and buying into the system. And what we really have an opportunity to see is Bob Bradley creating the first real American club that I remember, like a system that can prove, even without the superstar player, this will work. So I think you're absolutely right, Josh. And I would just like expand it to say, like, it's also, it's Bob's chance to show his masterpiece, right? This thing that he's gained from all of his years and studies abroad and learning from different systems and different coaches and the Marcelo Bielsas of the world, and to come back and build this thing, which he obviously implemented in 2 short seasons in LAFC. Now can he sort of dispatch that system in a weird, janky tournament like this with all these unknowns and see what it does. I don't think this is a referendum on Bob's system by any means, just because of all the curveballs that can be thrown with this tournament. But I do think, like you said, the silver lining of Carlos not being there is an opportunity to see what it looks like in those terms. So, guys, like, there's a lot of other teams in this tournament, and I know none of us three know enough about any of those teams, perhaps besides Ryan with NYCFC. We do know that the local rival, the Galaxy, they've arrived. LAFC has arrived as of yesterday. And Chicharito, although his wife is pregnant, is among the players. He's obviously got a lot to prove given how slow he came out. Let's talk a little bit about, you brought up Portland, Houston, obviously the US Open Cup history, but with the Galaxy, what do you guys expect? No Zlatan, no Vela, which has been the story for all the times these two teams have met. And what are you guys looking forward to seeing in that game?
Is it El Tráfico? I mean, I love that the representative for LAFC during the draw of this tournament was like, no, let's shutter El Tráfico. We're done with that. I like straight up in the MLS stream is like, no, we're done with that.
Well, that's long since by order of Bob Bradley.
Yes, no kidding, no kidding. But I actually put more stock in what the 3252 has to say about that than the coach himself. I think it's amazing that Chicharito's going and then Carlos is not. And there can be so many narratives around that would dominate the storyline of this match. And I don't know how this one fits into the others. It just seems like such a unique. It's like you knew that they were going to draw one another. It's like there was no denying that, right? So it doesn't feel. How could it feel like the other ones? There's no Galaxy supporters. There's no LAFC supporters. There's no Ibra. I mean, I was really looking forward to El Tráfico without Ibra and with Chicharito, because I thought it would change the dynamic of it a lot. Yeah. But now without Vela there, I'm not going to say it diminishes, but it definitely changes the feeling around it. I don't know. I expect it to be highly competitive, and they're going to go after one another. Why wouldn't they?
Just to interject real quick. Maybe It's even like what we were just talking about with being able to see Bob's system. He did build the club with an identity that was never supposed to be around one player. And the Galaxy have traditionally relied on superstars to do that. So we are now going to get the opportunity to see, again, the superstar building culture against the more identity-focused or style of play-focused culture. And so that might be another silver lining to see. And what better place to have it than basically on the moon? Ryan, I know you've got a lot to say about this.
When you look at the group and you look at the teams that join LAFC in Group F, I just think that the dynamics are really, really entertaining. With you can't forget about Houston, because as much as people probably would like to when they run off all four, Houston is a team that's had great success against the Galaxy in games that the Galaxy really wanted to win. Obviously, LAFC and Portland have etched much lesser known but no less legitimate rivalry than El Trafico, LA Derby, whatever you want to call it. And then that relationship between the two LA teams obviously is what it is. The weakest side of this square between the four teams is, I suppose, between Houston and Portland. But in that game, you have a team that knows how to play defense and grind versus a young team with a new coach that may have some ideas on how to break down the system that they've seen in play before. So I think that, as Max said, this is the most entertaining group in the tournament, and you're going to have to work to get out of it. LAFC start with Houston. That's not a gimme game. I mean, they're a team that LAFC has done well against. Referencing the rain game, the famous rain game that they opened up in the second half and won by, I think, 4-1. But there's also that U.S. Open Cup semifinal in 2018 where LAFC thought that they were on their way to their first trophy, or at least on their way to the right to play for their first trophy. And despite being up in penalties, despite getting to penalties on the strength of a Diego Rossi hat trick, Houston found a way to down them. So I think that there's so much history between all of these teams that may not play out the same way it would have in this tournament as it would have in a more conventional regular season. But all of these factors are still in play and make for a really interesting group stage for both LA teams.
It's worth noting that these group stage games will count towards the regular season standings.
Yes.
If there is a regular season after this. Again, I'm going to keep caveating things because I just am not sure. And I think we got to be honest about how precarious all of these things are. And I think I think it was Max or Ryan, one of you earlier was talking about how, yes, the leagues in Europe have started and they're going to wrap up the ends of their seasons. But, MLS has to play like a full season inside of the confines of COVID. And it's a real challenge. One that, I don't think any of us can say for certain is going to come off without a hitch. But looking at some of these other teams and looking at some of these other groups, is there anything that stands out for either of you guys on games you want to watch? I mean, there's obviously the opener, Orlando and Miami, which is tomorrow, Wednesday, the 8th of July. Some of the other games are getting moved around, pushed back. Dallas is dropping. Who knows what other changes to the schedule are going to happen. We're not going to go group by group. But is there any other things you're excited to see outside of the LAFC and Group F bubble within the bubble?
I have expectations for New York City Football Club, for Atlanta United, for the Seattle Sounders, along with LAFC. I think those are the four teams, and perhaps even with their schedule snafus, I'll throw Toronto FC into that kind of short list of tournament favorites. I have expectations for all of those clubs to come out and show their quality in the group stage, which means that they should end the group stage in standing to move forward to the knockout round. So not going too far into each individual group and their dynamics like we will with the LA teams. Those would be the clubs that I'll be looking for from the other groups to emerge into that knockout stage.
I like how a bunch of rivalries got mixed into the groups. It just kind of
random draw.
Well, whatever you want, but inject a little rivalry love into this whole thing, and I think it worked out well. It's hard to know what to expect. I was excited when they announced this idea. I love the World Cup. I think 1 month tournament. It has that feel. It felt a little janky with like the one big group and then the all the other groups. But now Dallas is out, and we'll see about Nashville and all these sorts of things. But I think team sports are so difficult, and if the MLS can pull this off, You have to give them a lot of credit for doing that. I don't know what it's going to look like. Are we going to come back and have a regular season in these venues? I mean, it seems very difficult right now. Seems very difficult. So if they can have this self-contained bubble, and if they can pull this off for over a month and give people a chance to watch soccer. I mean, soccer fans can watch the NWSL and on CBS and CBS Sports Network now, but if you can add MLS on top of it, and then obviously the European leagues have sort of gotten into it, it's nice. It seems soccer is like one of the things that has been able to manifest and happen. I mean, my background with covering fighting and mixed martial arts in the UFC, and that seemed like tailor-made for coming back in a moment where there wasn't any sports and there wasn't really a chance for team sports to happen in a quick way. You have these individual sports like the PGA Tour sort of come back and establish themselves again. And now we're getting into this team sport mode. It's a huge hill. I think it would be extremely impressive if the MLS pulls this off, if they don't have to cancel the tournament, and whatever team steps up and wins this thing. I mean, I don't know if they're going to have it's an asterisk that doesn't really count. It was fun, funny. Players couldn't show up, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. But if you're the team that wins this, I think you have to feel really, really good about your ability to overcome. And for competitors, that's kind of like the name of the game, is to overcome anything that's in front of you. And so not just the competition on the field, but the entire situation that they're all living through. I'm interested in it. I'm looking forward to this tournament. I would love to see Carlos Vela, but he's not there, and we'll see what LAFC's depth and their style brings to this kind of moment. I don't know. I'm glad to be chatting with you guys. I know that it's been too long, so it's fun to just sort of be chatting about things that, in the grand scheme, don't really matter, but they're nice to think about, right? It's nice to sort of wrap your head around something that, I mean, there's so many other things that we have to be thinking about right now that are extremely serious. Not so serious, this MLS Cup tournament, but it's fun, and that's nice. I mean, I'm into that.
Ryan, you're going down to the belly of the beast. I want to hear about what you're expecting, what your predictions are, what your overall feeling is. Josh just gave a good primer on where he's at.
We've discussed it before in previous conversations. I think the most important thing about me going down there, my presence there for this competition, is not what happens on the field, not who lifts this trophy. Even if LAFC win it, I think the thing that I'm most interested in is just seeing how this tournament maneuvers through this difficult circumstance, this difficult time where there are so many things working against it, to see if it can be played through to fruition. I hope that the ball's kicked according to schedule tomorrow, and I hope that, much like the NWSL tournament, save for a couple individual team issues, the overall tournament is able to go through largely without a hitch. And if so, I'll sit here and say that I'm much less interested in who wins the tournament than the tournament being played through with everybody remaining healthy. And watching the efforts put toward that every day throughout the group stage and then throughout the knockout stage it's going to be interesting, because this is not a normal tournament. This is not a tournament the likes of which we may ever see again. I think that I'm happy to be down there in a moment, in a piece of history, knowing while it's being created that is exactly what I'm in the midst of. I don't know if that's happened before in my career, so I suppose I'll hedge that positive manifestation up against the inarguable risk I'm putting myself in by going down to Florida for until one of the LA team wins or both are eliminated. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, and to be candid with both of you guys, I think if it wasn't for Josh, contacting us and being enthusiastic, if it wasn't for Ryan going down and covering it, and if it wasn't for my relationship with the two of you, I don't know that I would talk about this tournament. I think I would probably end up watching the games I'm really torn about it. I think I've probably let that sort of permeate the way I talk about things a lot. I mean, I'm torn between, being in a place where I feel like, I want the fun distraction. I think people need it, and like need the metaphor of sports to stand as a symbol, as it does in its best moments, of like, the human spirit and the ingenuity of people. But I'm also at a time like, I don't know that America needs to be distracted right now. I think they need to not be distracted right now. They need to look at, Ryan was on the FCFC episode with Mark Anthony Kay talking about Black Lives Matter and his experiences, just being in the streets and the protests for those things, seeing the way that the country has handled COVID or mishandled COVID. Sort of like, it seems like there's this reckoning happening, and I don't know like how and in what ways sports plays into that, or takes away from that reckoning. But like I said, even with my uncertainty about it, and not really being completely for it, in other words, I'm definitely a believer that symbolically it might send the wrong messages that everything's okay when it's really not okay. I'm also excited to just be on this journey with you guys. And if nothing else, as long as this tournament goes on, this is going to be a time capsule forever for how much this thing can bring positivity, negativity, the gray areas that are in between, the beauty of the game. I mean, I always thought I was like one of the people who loved sports more than anyone I knew. And then I met these guys and all the reporters who get a report about the sport. And so I know it's something we all miss dearly. And to see it go off, like Josh said, and if it does go off, like Ryan said, without the health issues and increasing the dangers in any way, then of course the organizers deserve credit. I find myself, for the first time in a while since LAFC came into the picture, also battling that hater voice in my head that says MLS is a Mickey Mouse league. It is still doing all this janky stuff. The battle and the tension for it to matter in the world is a battle that will never end, and it won't ever matter. Sometimes in Bank of California, being in the 3252, seeing the energy in that stadium, seeing the way the team plays, sometimes I'd forget that. But now it's like sort of back to the fore. And, what better place to have a Mickey Mouse show than at the wide world of sports? But I don't know. We live in unpredictable times, and I'm trying to put my own biases and assumptions to the side and just sort of be as neutral about it as I can, and just let the things hit me rather than trying to decide what they mean beforehand. So I'll continue to do that. We'll continue to bring you guys coverage while Ryan's there. We'll have other guests on. We'll talk about the games once they start happening. And yeah, most of all, just as Josh said, it's good to be with you guys again. It's good to be talking about all this stuff. And we welcome this season pass into the COVID Cup. Let it begin. We'll be on video. We'll be on audio. We're going to do it. Boys, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to get in the logistics of Ryan, but I think he'll fill us in on that next time we do this.
Right. For another pod. Let me get down there. Let me get get on the ground. I can give you a live report, and then once we get closer to LAFC's first game, once we get some of the first games of the tournament in the books, then we can talk about what we see and what we think for sure.
Are you? I just want to ask this: are you going to be at the games? Are you you have?
Yeah, I've requested credentials for all LAFC, Galaxy, and 2 of the NYCFC games.
Great.
So 8 total over the.
We're gonna be so excited to hear boots on the ground. I got my COVID test a couple days ago. I'm still waiting for the results. Hopefully, I'm negative, but hopefully you guys stay safe.
Yes.
Keep flattening curves, limiting spreads, and keeping it real. Next stop, COVID Cup, guys.
Pray
Here
for
we
me.
go. MLS is back? ? MLS is something. MLS is doing something. That's for sure. For Josh Gross, Ryan Wallerson, Max Bretos came on earlier. My name's Alex Dweeze, and we will see you guys next time.
For sure.